Everybody get a white hymnal and turn to page 347.
Matthew chapter 14 and Mark chapter 6. We may read both of them, but basically pretty well both of them line up the same, just a little bit of different wording. But I tell you what, just go to Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6 this evening. We're reading the last 3 or 4 verses of that chapter. A little bit of review. The beginning part of this chapter was when John the Baptist was beheaded. And then we all know that after that, Jesus took the disciples into a desert place. He took them into a place to where he could get along with them, they could get along with him, and they could minister one to another, because even though Jesus is the Son of God, he still had feelings. He still had heartbreak, because we know that John was his cousin. He was his cousin because of Elizabeth. But then also, John was the one that baptized him. John was that last Old Testament prophet was there in the wilderness, preaching about the way that Jesus was coming, announcing that he was coming on the scene. And we know that because of John calling sin, sin. That's what we need more Christians to do, is call sin, sin. We've got too many Christians that's willing to sweep things under the rug, that's willing to say, well, you know what, that's okay. Let's just sweep that under the rug and it'll be all right. But John called the king out on the issue at hand, and he was getting ready to marry his, or was with his brother's wife, and that's what called it. John said, hey, you're doing wrong. And then we know the story that that lady asked for John's head in a charger. That was what her birthday wish was when she blowed out her candles. She wanted John the Baptist's head in a basket. I'm going to tell you what. We think that the world's getting worse and worse, but it's been bad for a long time, even when Jesus was there on the scene. But then we go from there, and Jesus got the disciples over into that desert place, and then we know that the crowd come in. They They was following Jesus as to where he was. And as a child of God, that's the way we should be. We should want to be where he's at. Where he is moving, where he is working, that's where we need to be. I don't want to be in dead church. I don't want to be in dead services. I don't want to be around dead Christians. I want to be where there's life at. I want to be where there's action at. And that's what the way those folks was. They knew that Jesus was in the midst. They knew that Jesus was there. And because of that, they wanted to be there with him. That's why I like to come to this place. I know that God meets with us here. I know that he's going to show up. I know that he's not only does he only dwell here, I bring him in with me when I come. But this is one of a few places that I know that he's going to be here when I come in. You can't hardly describe it as to just walking through the doors. I can be here by myself and know that he's right here with me. Miss Nikki's shaking her head because she knows that she's cleaning now. That's where, used to do it. We would clean over here. And a lot of times, if I was by myself, I'd pray for the boys or Desiree was with me. We'd pray around the altar. Nobody, not a service going on. And God just shows up and shows off in such a way. But I want to be where he's at. I want to be where he is moving. That should be all of us' desire. Not to just come in and go through the motions, not to just be counted present, not just to be seen or to make mama and daddy happy or to make grandma and grandpa happy or make somebody else happy because we're here. We should want to come to make God himself happy. That's who we should come to want to please. But as Jesus was there, the crowd came in, and we all know that that was the feeding of the 5,000. And 5,000 men, that is. So there was no telling how many women and children was there. But then the crowd said, or the disciples told Jesus, send them away. Send them away. There's nothing here for them. Boy, I sure am thankful that when others look at what we have, others look at what God has given us or that he's about to give us, and they said there's nothing there, that God shows up and shows off in such a marvelous way. I'm thankful that he can take such something small and turn it into something so big. This was one little lad's lunch. I was giving Lucas a hard time at school today. I didn't eat no breakfast, and it was right at 10 o'clock, I guess, when we got through with chapel. And I asked him, I said, what you got in your lunchbox? I said, I'm going to need something. He said, well, we got to wait till 12:15, I believe it was, to eat. I said, I can't wait that long. But just thinking about, that's one little lad. Now, if it was Logan's lunchbox, we could have fed two little lads. But Lucas's is not as big, it's not packed as full, so, it would have just been one. But you take that Jesus took that one young man's lunch and fed 5,000, and the disciples just kept coming back. As they was waiting on those folks, as they set them down in groups of 50 and groups of hundreds, and how they went all over the countryside that day, just handing out what God's blessings. That's what we should still be doing. Now, we don't have fish sticks and hush puppies to hand out, but we should be handing out God's blessings. We should be telling others what God has done for us, and not be that one when people see us, oh, Lord, here they come. Don't look at them. Turn your head, because all they're going to want to do is complain. All they're going to want to do is tell us how bad they've got it, how bad the world has done them wrong, how bad God ain't done nothing for them. Don't be that type of Christian. Be that one that's upbeat. Be that one that's encouraging, that people will say, man, I want to go talk to them, because every time I leave them, I feel encouraged. I feel on fire. I feel like I need to be doing more for the Lord. But Jesus took that lunch and he spread it out. The disciples served it. And then when they thought they was done, whew, man, we got everybody fed. They packed up the to-go boxes. Everybody had them a box of to-go boxes, just heading out, just smiling from ear to ear. And then Jesus said, get in the boat. Oh, Jesus, we tired. Get in the boat. He constrained them. He made them go to the other side. And that's where we was at last week, how he came walking on the water. They did not recognize who he was. Even when he got in the boat with them, I think there was still some questioning maybe. Maybe there was still some doubt that this really was Jesus. And if you look back at verse 52 says, "For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened." How quick do we forget when God does something for us? They had just got done feeding the 5,000. And then the same night they got in the boat and was going to the other side, and Jesus came walking along the waters, and it says they forgot that they considered not the miracle of the loaves. That tells me that they was not considered, hey, this could be Jesus coming by my way. This could be the Son of God that's getting ready to come up on the boat with us. That tells me maybe they didn't really believe who he says he was. But we all know that the disciples, they served the Lord, and they really sold out later on. But that's one of the topics I want to talk about tonight. But we know that Jesus came walking by. He got in the boat with him. But before that, Peter got out. He walked a little bit with him. Peter got his eyes off the Lord. If you get your eyes off the Lord, you've gone wrong, folks. I'm telling you, you better keep your eyes on him. Young people, you better keep your eyes on him, because he is the best and most important decision that you'll ever make. I was telling, was it at the high school I told it about the great-grandma? We had a great-grandma McNeil. She said, keep your eyes on Jesus. I was small when she was still alive, but I remember that was her saying. Everybody said that's what she said every time you seen her. Keep your eyes on Jesus. She knew the secret to life. She knew what got her through hard times. She knew where her bread was buttered. She knew who was taking care of her. When you get a hold of God and you get a hold of him and know what he's truly doing in your life, and you sell out to him, you will want to keep your eyes on him. Because when you start looking around, you'll be like Peter, and you'll start sinking. Everything else will start getting heavy. It'll start weighing you down. There'll be troubles that come up. I couldn't even get my hair cut this evening without trouble. Desiree said, what's wrong? She said, she thought she was hurting me with the clippers, and sometimes she does. She gets in there and just really digs. But today she was being very easy. She said, are you okay? Have you got a knot on your head or something? I said, no, it's just everyday, normal stuff, just piling up. But if you're not careful, you'll get your eyes off of Jesus, and everything else will start weighing you down. Everything else will start bogging you down, and you'll get down and out, and before you know it, you'll be like Peter. You'll start sinking way down into that water. If you ain't careful, the waves will start slapping you in the face. They'll start going over you, and you won't even be able to see the boat. But I'm thankful that he is there. We know that he reached out. Peter grabbed his hand, and then immediately they was in the boat. But tonight we want to look at these 4 verses here. Verse 53 says, and when they had passed over, they came into the land of Gennesaret and drew to the shore. And when they were come out of the ship, straightway they knew him, and ran through the whole region round about, and began to carry about in beds those that were sick, where they heard he was. And whithersoever he entered into the villages or cities or country, they laid the sick in the streets, and besought him that they might touch, if it were but the border of his garment. And as many touched him, were made whole. As we look back, let's look back at verse 53. And when they had passed over, they would not have seen what Jesus was about to do if the disciples had not passed over with him. I think about times in my life that I've almost give up. That I've almost give up on God. That I've almost quit caring. That I've almost quit paying attention. And because of that, I almost lost the blessing. I almost lost sight of the blessing. But because of these disciples were in the boat, because they had passed over to the other side, they was able to enjoy the blessings. They was able to enjoy the miracles that Jesus was about to perform to all these. We're considering this as miracle number 21. But there's no telling how many miracles took place in the streets. It said they was bringing them out into the streets. But the disciples had to get to the other side. You may be going through a valley in this life. You know, you can't get to the mountain on the other side unless you go through the valley. I'm thankful that God's there willing to carry us through. I say this all the time. I've done more growing in the valley than I ever have on the mountaintop. Those mountaintop experiences are sweet, they're good, but I tell you what, I really believe that the reason why you do so much growing in the valley, the reason why it seems like you come out knowing more is because I feel like you're having to trust God more. You're having to trust every step that He makes. You're not worrying about what you're doing. When you get up on the mountaintop, you start looking around at everything else. But when you're down in that valley, you're looking to Him. You're trying to figure out where His steps are lining up and where you need to go. But they had to pass over. You know, they wouldn't have seen if they hadn't gotten a boat. I wonder if some of them was maybe still a little bit hurt because they said, well, Jesus was harsh with us. He made us get in a boat. Oh, poor fellas, they had to get in a boat and go with Jesus. I'll tell you what, I'd get in a boat with Jesus any day of the week. There's some boats I don't know that I'd want to get in with him, but hey, this may have been one of them ones. But I wonder whether they were still a little bit bitter, whether they was a little bit concerned about how he constrained them, how he forced them into that boat. You know, seems like the world wears their feelings on their sleeves, but God's people seems to wear their feelings on their sleeves sometimes more than the world does. It just one little thing will upset us. One little thing will get us out of sorts. You know why? The devil's wanting to do nothing but hinder us from worshiping. He's wanting to do nothing more than to hinder us from fellowshipping one with another. I tell the young people all the time in Sunday school, I've told y'all all the time, and I heard a fellow that I used to listen to a lot, but I don't really care much to listen to him anymore, but he talked about one time how the greatest tool in Satan's toolbox is a wedge. Because he can take that wedge and put it in that awful small crack. And before you know it, he keeps hitting on it. He keeps hitting on it. And that crack splits wide open. You don't believe that God's trying to do something around here? Open your eyes. God's wanting to do something. But as much as he wants to do something, that old sorry booger, he's trying to do as much as he can to hinder. Come tote my phone around a day and see the messages and the texts that I get and the phone calls that I get and the things that I have to deal with. I love this job, but I tell you what, God opens my eyes to see what's really going on. If nothing else, it'll be at home. It'll be at work. It'll be something all the time going on to try to hinder you from being in God's house, to try to hinder you from being in tune with your brother and sister in Christ. We just need to snuggle up to the Lord. Let all the other things fall by the wayside and just get close to Him. Because the thing about it is, to get to the other side, you're going to have to get in a boat. That boat was probably pretty tight. May have to be some uncomfortable rides to the other side. But God will get you through there. He'll get you on to the other side. But when they had passed over, they came into the land of Gennesaret and drew near to the shore. Does that name Gennesaret, does it sound familiar to anybody? Does anybody remember a story or a miracle that we had here a while back? The maniac of Gadara. Jesus come up on the seashore there, and that man met him. That man they called Legion, he had all those demons possessed him. You don't believe that demonic oppression, that demonic people get possessed by demons? My Bible tells me that it's true. The world, you can look at people and see that it's still true in the day and hour that we live in. But this man was possessed by multiple demons. They said, our name is Legion because there are many of us. Jesus cast those demons out into that herd of swine. They ran off the cliff and died. And then we find later on that man sitting at the feet of Jesus in his right mind, clothed, and wanting to do God's work, wanting to be where Jesus was at. And when they got ready to get in the boat, guess who was getting ready to get in the boat with him? That man. And Jesus told him, let's go back over here in Mark. I read it this afternoon. Mark chapter 5, verse 19. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee and hath had compassion on thee. And verse 20 says, and he departed and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men did marvel. Now we get over here to verse 54 where we're at tonight, and it says, when they were come out of the ship, straightway they knew him. I wonder how they knew him. Now you got to think about it is they had come across the Sea of Galilee. Now, of course, Jesus had been to and fro. He had been back and forth. But I just wonder. Now, this is just my simple mind. Now, we may get to heaven and God bust my bubble and tell me, no, son, you was wrong about this. But I just wonder if it says straightway they knew him. That says immediately they knew who Jesus was. I wonder if the old maniac may have been the one that told him about him. I wonder if ever since he got right, ever since he got on fire for Jesus, if he wasn't running up, down, and he may have been, it's like he was as he was possessed, but he was possessed by something a whole lot more powerful than those demons. He was telling everybody about Jesus. He was going to and fro. It says, go back and read your Bible in chapter 5, it says he was going about all of Decapolis telling everybody about Jesus and what Jesus had done for him. That's how simple I am. I think maybe that's the way it was. But like I say, the Lord, He can prove me wrong when we get to heaven. And if you've got a different story about it, you tell me later on. Don't call me out right now. Let me just live for the moment right now. To think that man had been bound by those chains, had been bound. He was living in the graveyard when Jesus come on the scene. Man, I don't even like being in the graveyard when we have to lay somebody to rest, much less living in the graveyard. Nuh-uh. That ain't for me. I'm going to live among the living. But this man, that's all that would put up with him, was the dead folks. And then he had got a new story to tell. When something as big as God moves in on the inside, you better have a new story to tell. People better know whose side you're on. It makes a difference what we do for the Lord. The crowd knew who Jesus was. But one of the commentaries I was reading after, I think it's actually in this Bible that I'm carrying tonight, was talking about how the disciples were still struggling. You go back, and we've already read it one time, but let's look back at verse 49. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit and cried out. They didn't even realize who Jesus was as he was walking on the water. How many times as Christians do we not realize that it's God doing something in our life? We'll cry out to God, God, do something. Please do this, Lord. Help me do this, or help me fix this, or do this for me. And then when he does, we're like, oh, boy, that happened. How did that happen? We don't even recognize who God is. The disciples were, but these folks, this crowd, knew who Jesus was. It makes a difference if we obey God or not. I go to thinking about that maniac and how Jesus told him. He said, go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done. When was the last time you told somebody how great the Lord was to you? How good he had been to you? That ought to be our story each and every day. There ought not be a day that we don't tell somebody how good Jesus is and how good he could be to them. But as standing up here as your pastor, there's days I don't. There's days I miss my opportunity. I'll get in a hurry. Somebody will be talking in a big way, and I'll just go out and not take my opportunity to tell them. Shame on me. But that maniac, he was telling them, it does make a difference if we obey God or not. You know, you go to thinking about people's lives and whether or not people are going to make it into hell. I know I can't save nobody, and neither can you. But it does make a difference that you tell everybody about them, that you be a soul winner. It's not up to you, preacher. It's not up to you Sunday school teachers to be the only one that's telling others about Jesus and telling them there's a devil's hell that people are going to die and go to if they don't get saved. Let's look at verse 55. And ran through the whole region round about and began to carry about in the beds those that were sick where they heard he was. Man, when Jesus got on the move, moving through this, everybody, they was running with folks in beds trying to get them to Jesus so that they could be healed. There used to be a time where we had enough faith, that we had enough belief that God would save somebody if we could just get them to God's house. I've heard people say it out of their own mouth that if I could just get my loved one to come to church, I believe they could get saved. If I could just get them to come to church with me, I believe they could get saved. But I wonder if we've kind of let that die down. If we've let that thought that if they come and get right, if they just come in these doors, there'd be enough convicting power upon them. I tell you what, God ain't changed. If you think God's changed, you're wrong. The only one that has changed is us, and our opinion of God, and the way that we look at God, and the way that how much faith we have in Him. But this crowd, they seen that Jesus was on the move, and they was running, trying to get their buddies saved, trying to get their buddies some help. Boy, I tell you what, when God gets on the move, we need to be dragging people with us to church. The Bible tells us that it compelled him. He had to go out into the highways and the hedges and compel them to come in. You may have to use some force sometimes. I'm thankful that these two right here used some force with me and brought me to church and didn't let me be a sorry no good for youngin' and sitting on the couch and saying, well, y'all just go on to church and bring me something back to eat. You going with us. You're going to sit there whether you like it or not. There was days I come in with a pooch slip mad because I had to be here, but chances are, before I got to the end of service, God was doing something. He would speak to me, and He'd bless me in spite of my sorry self. That's for sure. But Jesus was on the move in the area. They was carrying their friends to Him. He hasn't changed. We're the only ones that changed. Let's look at the last verse tonight. Verse 56 says, and whithersoever He entered into the villages or cities or country, they laid the sick in the streets and besought Him that they might touch, if it were but the border of His garment, and as many touched Him were made whole. The city streets looked like the ER. And they was coming in. They was bringing them out into the streets, lining the streets up, just hoping that Jesus would pass by. Just hoping that He would pass by and maybe the hem of His garment would brush them and they would be saved. Boy, that's how much faith they had in God. That's how much faith they had in Jesus that He would be able to heal them. Just the hem of His garment. I wonder if maybe they had heard the story of the old girl that had the issue of blood. She touched just the hem of His garment. Maybe that story done got to the other side of the lake as well. Maybe it got over there that, hey, you know, old Legion, he was telling us about Jesus. But there was also this other girl that had said she'd been to every doctor that there ever was, that had an issue of blood for a long time. And she said she just reached out and touched the hem of His garment. And she was made whole. She didn't have to worry about that issue no more. And these folks knew that if I could just get them to Jesus. That last part of that verse said, as many as touched Him were made whole. I still believe that God can touch people's lives today and make them whole. If I didn't believe that, I'd pack it up and go to the house and just stay at home. But I believe deep down in my heart that God can do something if we'll just let Him. If we'll just get our loved ones to church. If we'll just compel them to come in. If we'll just be that witness that we should be. I wonder if the reason some of them won't come is because they see the way we live our life. I tell people all the time, is there enough evidence in your life, if you was put on trial of being a Christian, if you was accused of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? There's been days that there's not been enough evidence in my life. I'll just be honest with you. But there's also been days that there ought to have been plenty of evidence, that there was plenty of evidence. We're only as good as our actions. Sometimes it would maybe do us good to re-enlist. You know, Brother Jeremiah, when he was in the military, he had to re-enlist a couple of times to get to where he was when he finished up, where he was able to retire. He had to keep signing up, had to keep re-enlisting. It'd do us some good as Christians. Now, you can't get saved. Once saved, always saved. I believe that truly tonight. But maybe it'd do us some good just to come get recapped. Say, you know what, Lord, put me back on the front line. Lord, get me back in the fight. Lord, sign me back up for another tenure. Lord, I want to serve You. I want to do more for You in the days to come. This crowd knew that if they could get to Jesus, they'd be healed. That ought to be all of us' burden. If we can just get our loved ones in these walls, if we can just get them here, if we can just get them to church, if we can just be that witness to them, I know that God will save them. We got to keep living it. I know there's folks that's praying for loved ones. I know there's folks that has been living that for a long time. There's a man sitting right here on this front row. He's in glory now, but he didn't want to hear it. It took a long time to get him to ever believe. You get him to where the Lord could save him. We heard just a couple of weeks ago, 84-year-old man. Don't wait that long. Don't wait that long to get right with the Lord. I told the kids this morning at chapel, don't wait till you get 25 to try to sell out to the Lord. Decide you're going to go ahead and do it now. You're wasting a whole lot of years to wait. You're wasting a whole lot of, you're gaining a whole lot less hurt if you'll go ahead and do it now and just go ahead and sell out to Him. I don't know what He could do for you or do through you if you just let Him. These folks knew that if they could get him to Jesus, get their friends to Jesus, He would make a difference. That's where our desire should still be in the day and hour that we live. May that be our prayers, that Lord, if we can just get them to You, You'll save them. I believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that He would save folks if we just get them here. Now, some people get saved before they ever can get here. But there ought to be enough God on you that light shining through you can be that testimony. You may be the only Bible that some people ever pick up. Well, I don't want to be read as some old funny book. I want them to know the truth when they look at my life. And I hope and pray that yours is lining up as well as tonight. Let's pray. Lord, I thank You for this thought tonight. Lord, I thank You for Your precious word. I thank You how it speaks to us, Lord. I thank You for how it guides us in our lives that we should live better, to be better Christians. Lord, I pray, God, that You would help us. Lord, as we go out into this lost and dying world, help us, God, to tell others about You. Lord, may we let our light shine so bright, Lord, that others would have to put glasses on. Lord, that they couldn't even look at us, be like Moses and have to wear a veil. Lord, I pray, God, that we would let it shine for You. Father, I pray if there be one here tonight, Lord, that doesn't know You, Lord, I pray that You would open their eyes. God, that You would convict them of their sins. Show them, God, of their lost and dying condition before they leave this place tonight. God, I pray that they would get things right with You. Now go with us in our separate ways. Bring us back out to Your house this Lord's day. Lord, we love You. In Jesus'